The ancient Greeks tell the legend about a farmer, Gyges, who was working in a field when an earthquake opened up the ground in front of him, exposing a statue of a man. Gyges noticed that the statue had a ring on a finger, and he jumped in the hole, stuck the ring on his own finger, and jumped out again just as the earth closed up. A few days later, Gyges went into the city on some kind of business. While he was sitting in the room waiting his turn, he fidgeted with the ring. To his amazement, he discovered that when he turned the ring one way, he became invisible. And when he turned it back, he became visible again. What did Gyges do with this newfound power? He seduced the queen, killed the king, seized the throne. The point about the myth of Gyges was that people often avoid doing wrong, not because the act itself is wrong, but because they fear being caught. They fear being punished. They fear the shame of being found out. How much does the fear of being caught stop you from doing bad things? Now be honest. If you knew you could steal enough money to have everything you ever wanted, and you knew without a doubt that you wouldn't be caught, what would you do? Would you do it? Or if you could cheat on your spouse without any chance at all of ever being caught, would you do it? Would you be looking at internet pornography, or would you be doing other bad things if you knew there was absolutely no chance that you'd ever be exposed? What immoral or even illegal acts would you commit if you knew you could get away with them all? Scary questions, aren't they? That's because they go deep into the heart of one of the most basic teachings of the Christian faith, a teaching that has to do with human sinfulness. The Bible says in Romans 3:23 that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. It also says in verses 10 to 18, as it is written, there is no one righteous, not even one. There is no one who understands, no one who seeks God. All have turned away. They have together become worthless. There is no one who does good, not even one. Their throats are open graves. Their tongues practice deceit. The poison of vipers is on their lips. Their mouths are full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Ruin and misery mark their ways, and the way of peace they do not know. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Now that's a pretty serious indictment. You know, there's probably no Christian teaching that comes under more criticism, more attack, than the teaching of human sinfulness. This idea that we are all inherently sinful, or that our natures are bent toward evil. You know, the 20th century began with a wave of great hope and optimism. Someone said that as we entered this century, we were facing a new era of infinite knowledge that was going to solve all of our problems, and life was going to be good for everyone. Well, things didn't quite turn out that way, did they? How many millions were killed or wounded in the wars of the 20th century? In fact, can you name one century in all recorded human history during which humans weren't warring against each other and killing each other with every means possible? Oh, and our new century, the 21st century, hasn't exactly gotten off to a whiz-bang jolly good start either, has it? I mean, we were less than 2 years into it before what? 9/11? I have to agree with a theologian who said that human sinfulness is the one Christian doctrine we don't have to take on faith, because we can see the reality of it all around us. Now, you might be thinking, well, Lonnie, I'm not all that bad. I'm really not. And you might not be. However, bad is a relative term. Bad as compared to whom your wicked Uncle Ernie, the child molester? Bad compared to Ted Bundy, the serial rapist and murderer? Or to Osama bin Laden? Sure, you can always find people who have done worse things than you have, but does that make you good? You can't compare the wickedness of Al Capone to that of Adolf Hitler, can you? And yet, who would call Al Capone good? Suppose there was only one ultimate standard of goodness, one standard of holiness, the goodness and holiness of God Himself, our Creator and Maker. And suppose that this God were to say to each of us, as He has in 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 16, Lonnie, be holy, because I am holy. How well would you fare comparing yourself to that standard of goodness and holiness, and not to say the standard of Charles Manson or of Timothy McVeigh? Sure, most of us don't steal or rape or murder or do violence to others. But what about covetousness, greed, lust, jealousy, or hatred? How well would you do if that were the standard by which you are to be judged? Well, how do you fare before a standard that says, anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart? Matthew chapter 5, verse 28. Or before one that says in verse 44, Lonnie, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. What about one that says in verses 21 and 22, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. We live today in what's been dubbed the postmodern era, a time characterized by the idea that moral values are all personal, relative, social, that no one has the right to judge our actions against right or wrong. Yet, no one really lives that way, do they? No one really believes that right and wrong are purely personal. After 9/11, who of our generation is going to say that good and evil are relative terms? And if you think flying airplanes filled with men, women, and children into buildings filled with men and women and children isn't morally wrong, then it's not morally wrong? Please. And who hasn't done things that deep down you know were wrong things that still gnaw at you, and that despite all your rationalizations and justifications still prickle your conscience? Is there anyone who hasn't felt that? I doubt it. The simple facts are that a standard of right and wrong does exist because God is a moral God, and He has placed at least some of that standard in every person's heart. It is what is known as conscience. And we have all violated that standard. We've all violated our consciences. Some of us just cover it up better than others do. That's all. The philosopher Immanuel Kant once argued that if you went with just one premise, that God is just, then you have to believe in an afterlife, because there is no justice in this life. And who's going to disagree with the fact that there is no justice now? So, if God is just, then judgment must come. And the Bible says that it will. In Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 14, God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. Every deed? Every hidden thing? How would you like to one day have to answer even for the most secret things you've ever thought or done? Scary thought, isn't it? It ought to be. Yet here we're getting down to the bottom line of Christianity again, which is that Jesus, our Creator, died on the cross for us, and He died there for one principal reason. He faced on the cross the punishment for your evil deeds and even for your evil thoughts, because if you had to answer for them before God in His judgment, you would be condemned. Yes, whether you realize it or not, you would be condemned. And I think more people realize it than want to let on that they do. Here's the bottom line of Salvation 101. You don't have to face the condemnation that you deserve, because Jesus Himself faced it in your stead at the cross. The punishment you deserve for all the bad things you've ever done or thought, all things that have violated God's standard, the punishment has already been taken care of. Jesus endured it in your place. That is very good news. It's life-changing news. It's news that could give you a chance to start over, to have a new beginning, even a new life. A new life in Jesus.